What happens when a market that couldn't build boats fast enough suddenly can't sell them? That's where we are in 2026. Not long ago, catamarans were selling over asking. Buyers were lining up. Brokers didn't even have to try that hard. It felt like the good times would just roll on forever. Now, listings are piling up. Boats are sitting for months, and sellers who were confident 2 years ago are suddenly adjusting prices again. This isn't drama, it's a reset. And if you own a cat, want to buy one, or are thinking about selling, you need to understand what's actually happening beneath the surface. I remember the first time I realized something strange was happening during the pandemic years. I was tied up in a marina in the Mediterranean, minding my own business, and the guy 2 slips down mentioned he'd just sold his cat for more than he paid for it 3 years earlier. I thought he was joking. Boats aren't supposed to do that. They're supposed to eat money, not make it. But between 2020 and 2023, the rules felt like they'd been suspended. Travel shut down. Flights were a mess. People were stuck at home with savings accounts that hadn't been touched for vacations, restaurants, or big experiences. Suddenly, a boat wasn't just a toy, it was freedom. It was isolation when isolation felt safe. It was control in a world that didn't feel controllable. At the same time, shipyards were backed up. Supply chains were broken. Engines were delayed. Electronics were impossible to source. New builds stretched further and further out. So buyers turned to the used market. That's when things got weird. 5 to 10-year-old catamarans started selling at numbers that didn't make sense. In some cases, they moved for close to, or even above, their original purchase price. I had friends who effectively sailed for free for a few seasons because the market lifted their boat's value while they used it. But here's the truth. That wasn't strength. That was distortion. Scarcity creates emotional buying, and emotional buying ignores fundamentals. Boats are depreciating assets. They wear. They age. Systems get outdated. Upholstery fades. Engines accumulate hours. None of that stopped during the boom. It was just temporarily ignored. The real warning sign wasn't that prices were high. It was that buyers stopped negotiating. When people stop asking, "Is this worth it?" and start asking, "How fast can I wire the deposit?" you're no longer in a balanced market. Now, fast forward to 2026. Travel is fully open again. Production has largely normalized. New boats are being delivered, and that redirected pandemic money has flowed back into normal life. Mortgages, inflation, cost of living, and good old-fashioned financial caution. Without artificial scarcity propping things up, depreciation has returned like gravity. The boat that held its value in 2022 is now being compared to newer models with better layouts, better tech, and cleaner histories. Buyers are analytical again. They're asking for surveys. They're negotiating. They're walking away. And that's the key difference. The fantasy wasn't that catamarans were wonderful. They still are. The fantasy was that they were immune to economic reality, that you could buy at the peak and exit at the peak forever. Markets don't work that way. What we're seeing now isn't collapse, it's normalization. Rough normalization, sure, but a return to what boats have always done. Depreciate over time, reward smart buyers, and punish emotional ones. The pandemic era was a sugar high. 2026 is the morning after, and the headache is real. If you really want to understand this reset, you have to look at the Caribbean. Historically, that region has been the heartbeat of the cruising catamaran world. Boats cycle through charter fleets. Private owners list there. International buyers fly in, do sea trials in warm water, and deals happen quickly. It's liquid, or at least it used to be. Now the numbers tell a different story. Close to 400 catamarans sitting on the market, fewer than 100 moving in a full year. That's roughly 1 sale for every 4 boats listed. Spend a week walking docks in places like Tortola or Saint Martin and you can feel it. The boats are clean, the listings are polished, the brokers are polite and professional, but there's a quiet tension underneath it all. Inventory is heavy, and most of it isn't ancient junk. A huge percentage of those boats are under 10 years old. That means buyers aren't comparing a tired relic to something modern. They're comparing near-new boat against near-new boat. And when buyers have choice, they slow down. That's the freezing effect. It's not that nobody wants a catamaran, it's that they don't feel urgency anymore. They know there are alternatives, they know price reductions are likely, so they wait. Waiting is powerful in an oversupplied market. Another factor is geography. The United States market has been absorbing much of its own inventory. Domestic buyers are staying domestic. Tariff considerations and logistics make it simpler to buy a boat already imported and documented locally. That pulls demand away from the Caribbean pipeline. At the same time, international buyers are more cautious. Currency shifts, inflation pressures back home, and general economic uncertainty shrink the pool of people willing to hop on a plane and wire a large deposit. Then there's the condition gap. A lot of Caribbean boats are ex-charter or recently retired from fleets. They're not necessarily bad boats, some are well maintained, but buyers walk aboard expecting turnkey perfection. Social media and glossy listings have raised expectations. Minor wear that would have been normal 10 years ago now feels like a red flag. So boats sit. Price reductions happen in stages. First a small trim, then another, then maybe a larger cut months later. But if an owner financed at peak prices, there's only so far they can go before they hit the loan balance wall. That's when a listing becomes what I call dock furniture. It's technically for sale, it's online, it has professional photos, but in practical terms, it's stuck. The Caribbean market feels frozen not because sailing is dying, it feels frozen because supply outran demand, and buyer psychology flipped from fear of missing out to confidence in waiting. When urgency disappears from the buyer side and lands squarely on the seller side, that's when prices start to bend. And right now, in that region especially, they're bending hard. There was a time when buying an ex-charter catamaran felt like a smart, almost strategic move. You'd get a well-known model, professionally maintained, usually on a predictable service schedule and priced below a private owner version. For years, that formula worked, and during the boom, it worked even better. 4-cabin ex-charter cats were moving quickly because private 3-cabin owner versions were harder to find. If you wanted a specific model and didn't want to wait 2 years for a new build, you compromised on layout. You told yourself, I can live with the extra cabins, or I'll refit it over time. And in a rising market, that compromise didn't feel dangerous. But now, the math has changed. As pandemic-era private buyers start listing their boats, the supply of owner version layouts has increased dramatically. Suddenly, buyers have options, real options. And when someone is spending serious money, layout becomes emotional. People don't want to feel like they're living in a business model. They want space, storage, a proper owner's suite, less wear from rotating charter guests. Even if that wear is mostly cosmetic, the perception matters. That perception shift is brutal for ex-charter boats. Buyers walk aboard already looking for signs of fatigue. They notice scuffed steps, tired cushions, older electronics. They start calculating upgrade costs in their head before they've even finished the tour. New upholstery, new batteries, maybe new sails. It adds up quickly. In a hot market, buyers ignored those numbers because appreciation masked the risk. In a resetting market, they don't. So the pricing gap between owner versions and ex-charter configurations widens. Boats that once felt like bargains now feel like projects. And in 2026, many buyers don't want projects. They want turnkey. That doesn't mean ex-charter cats are bad boats. Some of them are solid, well-maintained platforms with years of life left. But value is no longer propped up by scarcity. It's determined by comparison. And when comparisons multiply, the weakest segment gets repriced first. Right now, that segment is ex-charter 4-cabin cats. This is the part people don't like talking about at the yacht club bar. During the peak years, financing was cheap and optimism was high. Buyers stretched a little further because rates were low and resale values looked strong. On paper, it made sense. Monthly payments felt manageable, and the assumption was simple. If I ever need to sell, I'll get most of it back. That assumption no longer holds. As prices normalize and interest rates remain higher than they were during the boom, a lot of owners are discovering something uncomfortable. The boat is worth less than the remaining loan balance. That's what being underwater means. If you owe more than the boat can realistically sell for, you don't have full flexibility. You can't just drop the price to meet the market without bringing cash to closing. And not everyone has that kind of liquidity sitting around. So instead, the boat gets listed at a number that covers the loan. It sits. Showings are sparse. Offers come in lower, sometimes much lower, and they're rejected because accepting them would require writing a check to the bank. This creates a strange kind of paralysis. From the outside, it looks like sellers are stubborn or unrealistic, but often they're constrained. The math boxes them in. Meanwhile, ownership costs don't pause. Insurance, dockage, maintenance, haul-outs, those bills keep coming. And in a softer market, that ongoing cost adds pressure. Emotional pressure, financial pressure. Some owners eventually decide to cut losses and inject cash to exit. Others hold on, hoping for a rebound. And some simply stop actively marketing, waiting for conditions to improve. That's how markets feel frozen even when listings are plentiful. Transactions slow because a portion of sellers physically cannot meet buyers where the market is. It's not dramatic, it's not loud, it's just quiet financial gravity pulling expectations back to earth. And for those who bought at the peak with leverage, that gravity feels heavy. Now, here's the part that doesn't get enough attention. Because while one side of the market is stressed, another side is quietly adapting. Smart money isn't panicking, it's repositioning. First, buyers with liquidity are stepping in, but carefully. They're not chasing hype. They're targeting well-maintained, realistically priced boats with clean service histories. Turnkey sells. Boats that show pride of ownership still move. Not instantly like during the boom, but they move. Second, power catamarans are attracting fresh attention. A lot of newer buyers want comfort, enclosed helms, air conditioning, simple handling, and less reliance on sailing skill. For charter especially, power cats open the experience to a broader audience. That segment hasn't escaped pressure entirely, but it's drawing interest because it aligns with how many people actually use boats today. Third, managed ownership and guaranteed charter income programs are gaining traction again. Buyers who still want the lifestyle but don't want full exposure to resale volatility are looking for structured models. Reduced upside, yes, but reduced risk too. And finally, experienced sailors are doing what they've always done in corrections: upgrading. Selling high during the boom, waiting through the reset, then stepping back in when pricing reflects reality. Cycles create opportunity for those who aren't over-leveraged. The reset isn't killing the dream, it's filtering it. The smart money isn't trying to outsmart the market, it's respecting it, running the numbers, prioritizing condition over emotion, and remembering that boats are for sailing first, investing second. So, is the catamaran market crashing? If you bought at the peak and you're trying to sell right now, it probably feels like it. If you're a patient buyer watching prices soften, it might feel like opportunity. And if you've been around boats long enough, it just feels like another cycle doing what cycles do. The Great Reset of 2026 isn't about the end of sailing. It's about the end of fantasy pricing. The pandemic years bent reality. Scarcity, cheap money, and emotion pushed values beyond what made long-term sense. Now the market is rediscovering gravity. Depreciation is back. Buyers are cautious. Sellers have to be realistic. And honestly, that's not a bad thing. Healthy markets aren't built on panic buying or inflated expectations. They're built on balance. On boats priced correctly, on owners who maintain them properly, on buyers who know what they're getting into. If you're selling, be honest with yourself and with the numbers. If you're buying, be patient and do your homework. And if you're already out there sailing and not worrying about resale value every 5 minutes, you might be the smartest one in the room. At the end of the day, these boats were never meant to be stock portfolios. They're meant to take you across blue water, into quiet anchorages, and into stories you'll still be telling years from now. Markets reset, the ocean doesn't. All right, that's my take from the dock. Let me know what you're seeing out there, especially if you're trying to buy or sell right now. I'm curious how it feels where you are. Fair winds, and I'll see you in the next one.